And good evening from here on a peninsula down Baja California way. It's great to be in touch. For those of you who have stuck with us, this is the third time I've loaded up the PowerPoint, and I hope this will stay active here, at least for the duration. Apologies again. Technical difficulties. If I think I have it bad in Tennessee, it's a little more of a challenge here. I, for some reason, could not get the signal to allow me to upload PowerPoint starting well before 7. But it's good to hear from you. I'm going to, just for the fun of it, I am going to turn this around. Watch me lose it now. But I want to share a little bit of this sunset with those of you who are here just because I can. But this is what we're looking at here off the balcony. And if that doesn't make you want to see the ocean, I understand some of you up north are feeling a lot of colder temperatures, even some snow up Kansas City way. But here we are. Again, for those who try to stay up with the End Times update, this is a simple process we're going through here these days. Having done a Bible study on end times, starting with what Jesus said about the end times when the disciples asked him there in Matthew 24, recorded also Luke 13 and Mark 21. We itemized the prophecies that he described. And we also looked at what Paul said and what John the Revelator said, what Peter has said, and even some Old Testament prophets, and have added some prophecies that are very clear, going mostly with what is clear. Then, because so many people are convinced that what they said is now starting to happen right here in this generation in our time, and it sure looks that way, we have started matching up the scriptures with current events by going with headlines. And it's intended to make this as easy as possible for those of you who are wanting to stay in touch with what's going on by looking at headlines. So let's go ahead. I want to go ahead and start in here with a little bit of feedback. Some good comments have been made from the last week's session, but let's go ahead and go to the PowerPoint. Hope that it continues to go through. Yes, here's the first Unbelievers Feedback. A fellow named Daniel, he pointed out from one of the scriptures here, he says Matthew 24 has to do with the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. Verse 34 clearly teaches those things will happen to that generation, those people living at that time. But if you must apply living at that time, if you must apply it to you, one of the signs is the abomination of desolation standing in the most holy place. Since there is no holy place to be standing in, what are you worried about? Using your methods, the temple would have to be in existence. So what is interesting, and this is a very common view, it's one reason I share it here as feedback, it's a very common view that Jesus was talking about that generation, his generation. But what we know very clearly, and this is just for consideration for the many good folks like Daniel, is that it was not just, not all the things that Jesus said would happen in that generation happened. Of course, there were wars and rumors of wars, no doubt some famines, no doubt pestilence, some things like that. But when you read the whole context of the chapter, it definitely sounds as if it was going to be truly all of those things happening in one generation. And had a fellow named Frank who gave some comment. I meant to put that up here, pointing out that he, going back to the start of Jerusalem in 1948, and that Jesus said this generation would not pass to all these things happen. He sees that very possible as in 2028. I, as you know, am very leery of dates. And it is true, Jesus said that only God the Father knows when he is to come back, the second coming. Interestingly, though, it is something that I think we have to be mindful of, and that is Paul told the Thessalonians that it was not going to come as a surprise that the people who were in the light and who saw and knew what was to be happening would not be caught off guard. It would not be a thief in the night to them. So even though we don't know the day or the hour on the one hand, we do thoroughly believe that Jesus gave signs so that people like us in this generation could have a feel for the timing know what was going on. So that's just something worth pointing out. Let's go on here and just briefly talk about the list of prophecies from this, again, using mostly from Matthew 24, and where there's quite a few of them listed. I put in dark print for those who are able to see the screen how that Jesus talked about a sequence. Didn't just talk about things happening, which appear to be in a intensity and frequency as it goes through here and builds up to this climax of his coming. But he even talks about here in verse 6, but the end is still to come. In other words, these things will be happening, but it's not the end yet. All these things are the beginning of birth pains, verse 8. If we go on, he is going down through all of these various prophecies that he gave. He gives a positive one there in verse 14. We could list it as P12, which is prophecy 12. It's the 12th one that we've listed. And it's where the gospel would be preached to all people groups. And then he says, and then the end will come. So fascinating that he talks about all these things in a sequence of time. And here what we referenced earlier that the gentleman gave the feedback on, that is where it said the abomination will be stand in the holy place. And it's very interesting to know that right now there is a group out there, or I should say in Jerusalem, Temple Mount Institute. They have all the pieces that go together to make up a temple. And recently, very recently, in the last few weeks, red heifers were flown over from Texas because the search has been on for at least a decade, I believe, to find the perfect red heifer to sacrifice when the new temple is built. So there are many things, and as you probably know, we won't talk it tonight from a headline standpoint, but we have the Jews and the Arabs right now making a big deal about who has control of that Temple Mount area. It's becoming quite a hot topic, and again, incredible timing on all of these different things that are shaping up. Here is some more of the prophecies, and we won't take the time tonight to read through them. But one we just added recently is coming from the book there of 2 Peter chapter 3, and it's so clear and it seems so fitting because of the feedback we get. Above all, you must understand, verse 3, that in the last days scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, where is this coming he promised? Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. And there's a scripture that really does become quite clear in talking about one of the things prophesied, that there would be a great number of scoffers. So we have added that as the prophecy 21. Scoffers would doubt and ridicule Christ's second coming. And no doubt there have been many in time, but it seems that is picking up steam by a lot of people as more and more authors and speakers and preachers and teachers are talking about second coming. Of course, it's reaching more and more ears, more and more people, and they are definitely coming out of the woodwork, scoffing at the very idea. So that just all makes sense, doesn't it? This is what the end times update, this is what would have to happen to have these prophecies fulfilled. I mention this because if you'll notice, I'm using the word global regularly. And it's just incredible what is happening globally right now that would have to take place before these many prophecies could be fulfilled. There'd have to be global physical distress, global persecution and prejudice, global apostasy and wickedness, global evangelism, global translation, global communication, global audiovisual, global currency financial system, global ID system, global government, and back to our comment, a third temple would have to exist. So these are things that, again, none of these things have not happened on the worldwide scale up until just in recent decades. In fact, many of them in the last couple of decades. So the technology is just incredible. It's come together quickly, and many of you who would be adults now, you would have seen this. The younger generation probably hadn't seen. Well, yeah, they've seen a lot too in the last 5-10 years, but we have really seen it. And we know that times are different, not just for our generation, but times are different for mankind. I mean, think of what is in existence now that was not. My father saw first automobiles or thereabouts. This is incredible what has happened in just the last 120, 130 years. So these are things that are worth noting because it puts it all in perspective for. Let's go to some of the prophecies, starting again. So much is happening right now with some of these prophecies. When Jesus said there'd be wars and rumors of wars, of course, there were wars and rumors of wars back when he existed. But without the technology that exists in these recent decades, think how this intensity picks up and it goes to a global thing like never before when we talk wars, rumors of wars. And here, good example, Elon Musk weighing in with this headline. Elon Musk says most people oblivious to the danger of World War III as United Nations chief fears escalation in the Ukraine war. Um, all these headlines, by the way, are in the past week. That's why we're trying to stay up to date. You may have heard of some other headlines that came up even 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks ago. We don't go back now necessarily. Once in a while, I will point back to one, but these are fresh. This is the latest update. This is the end times talk right now. And it's not something I put together as far as the headlines, make them up. I just pass them on to you so you can have some serious consideration. Here is one that really intrigues me because this has been gaining some steam over in Russia, where many of the newscasters over there are talking more and more. And they call them sometimes propagandists, but a lot of them are people also that are being repeated and played up to the Russian civilization, to the Russian people. But here's a Russian TV expert that targets Israel with veiled Iran threat. So what they're saying is that Iran is, that Russia is more and more siding with Iran and some of the things that are happening. And I would remind some of you who studied Ezekiel with us, Ezekiel 38, there's a war that's coming down the pike at some point with countries from the north taking on Israel. And now here we have Russia that is sort of kind of hiding behind some of the things Iran does. They're providing and supplying Iran with a lot of things a lot of military, I guess I need to get a little more specific, military ammunition and weaponry. But they have in technology, they have definitely helped them in many ways. And some are quite sure they've even helped them with the nuclear development. But it's something that where Iran is not happy with some things Israel has done in recent weeks, days. There is a growing sentiment in a group of allies that are coming together more and more to talk down Israel and what it's trying to do to defend itself. Another headline that I find very interesting here is where the Iranian army chief, and this goes along with what we just said, says any country that attacks us will be hit along with Israel. So there you have a statement. And again, we're not hearing these things so much over here in the United States, probably for good reason, but here are other people in other countries that are hearing it. And these documents, again, any of you have questions as to more information about which article or which source of news, feel free to email me. I'll try to make sure you get at least the link and you can investigate for yourself. But this is one here that shows again how that the tensions are growing and mounting up between Israel and Iran. And Iran, of course, comes along in a package with Russia, seemingly, apparently, some with Turkey, but Syria and Lebanon, some of these other countries nearby. And we'll probably hear more and more of this in just the next few weeks. Let's go to one more. Well, I thought I had on there, and we might still may come up out of order. I did want to tell you that Kim Jong-un in North Korea has told his military to prepare for war. And I'm sorry that headline's not right here in line with what I thought it was. But that's significant. And then you have China, who is more and more talking up that Taiwan is going to be theirs, and they're warning of any intervention on our part. So we'll see where that goes. But here we're having it, things from all corners of the earth, so it seems, that are playing right in here on the wars and rumors of wars. Let's go to Prophecy 5. And what is that? There would be famines, what that's supposed to say. This is where an interesting documentary, should say news item says by Tucker Carlson, Biden said leaders discussed how to increase food shortages. Now 100 food plants explode, livestock dying in massive numbers by the thousands. Has many people very intrigued and concerned as to what is going on here. And of course, just knowing, and they're talking food shortages, just as it says here. Our American government is starting to talk food shortages. And that's a kind of a new thing for us in America. I haven't in my 63 years. Well, obviously I haven't gone without food much, but I haven't had to worry about it. There's not ever been talk that I can recall, maybe of a certain crop, maybe of a certain thing, but not all the way around with both livestock and agricultural growth of things that we have just taken for granted here in America. Suddenly, talk of that's of interest. Of course, we have to talk about the sixth prophecy on the list, and that is this week. That's what's happened there in central Turkey. And of course, people are going to email me or text me, no doubt, and say that's been going on forever. And that's true. There have been earthquakes going on forever. I mentioned this in part, of course, devastating, or some 20,000 plus whatever deaths so far that people are taking note of. And that's tragic. And my heart goes out to the many people. And of course, we're seeing things that show how devastating it is. Weeping mothers whose children died in the early morning there as the earthquake took place. But I say this because this is a 7.8, and what is coming now with the data and more is that earthquakes of the intense type are more frequent than ever since records have been kept, and that's of interest because, as we said, frequency, intensity is much of what seems to be talked up and implied from what Jesus said as what would be in the latter times. And certainly this by itself is it's big news and it's terrible news, but it's not that it's so unusual in the light of the prophecies until you realize that it is now but one of many more earthquake swarms we talked about, the volcanoes. I mentioned a few weeks ago, there are twice as many, or there were at that point, twice as many active volcanoes as the average in times before. And with those active volcanoes are earthquake swarms where thousands of earthquakes take place right in that immediate vicinity. So intensity, frequency, we have to recognize those things, at least as we study things. Now this is a mistake here. Prophecy 8, there will be persecution. Doesn't look like the PowerPoint was they say what goes in comes out, so I'll take responsibility. I'm sorry, but I did not see that either on the screen as I went back and reviewed. But here we have very interesting statistic that I don't want you to miss the point. When it said, Jesus said there'd be persecution, an interesting thing just recently revealed here at the Christian Post Daily is that there's a Pew, and in fact, you can go to the Pew Research Center and see this article for yourself. Very interesting. They also point out something about non-believers, nonards, or atheists. But for our point in this particular, this is a very interesting bit of news here. The print may be too small for you to read, but it's talking about how that from 2012 to 2022, there was a sharp increase in countries reporting persecution of Christians. And it's quite interesting. In fact, it was 110 in 2012. And in 2020, first year COVID, it jumped up and there were 155, 45 more countries, 155 that were reporting. It tells you in this article the things they were looking at as identifying persecution. They called it, the harassment, verbal abuse, physical violent killings, whether it's committed by government or social groups. But all of it, it's what's reported to a certain organization or as it was polled. But very interesting. That's significant. That's very significant. You start talking over half the countries in the world reporting this kind of persecution. That's significant and a headline worth noting. This is something that many people have been aware of and very sensitive to. And as you know, there was here's the headline: Right-wingers meltdown over satanic Pfizer-sponsored Grammys. The Grammys had a couple of musicians that sang, and it was quite the demonstration that reflected and promoted satanic type um, actions, background, words, etc. That was just very troubling to a lot of people. But from our standpoint, you see again, this is becoming more and more common, whether it's this or large corporations that are doing things. And of course, we are talking now wickedness. That's not spelled that way, but wickedness with, you'd almost think I was on vacation, wouldn't you? I didn't catch a lot of these, but wickedness is anything that is what the Bible calls wickedness when we use the definitions here, or anything that is against God. So I guess I need to be clear on that and just point out that that's what Jesus, no doubt, would have been referring to when he used the word as he did there. Wickedness would increase. This one I still keep talking up because this is the clearest prophecy. It's where Jesus said right before the end will come, he said that the gospel be preached to all people groups. And this is a Bible my wife has, and inside the cover it says Tyndale House Publishers and Wycliffe Bible Translators share the vision for an understandable, accurate translation of the Bible for every person in the world. And their goal is Vision 2025. So I told somebody recently, in fact, I didn't mention it here, but some of you know about the Air Force general who is saying that he thinks, or at least some military leader, and I think it was that, who was saying that he thought there was a good chance we would be at war with China by 2025. I don't know what he's basing any of that on. But what interests me are all the dates that are coming out with 2025, 2027, 2028. China saying they will be the supreme power of the world, 2028. All these dates that are themselves talking, and they fit in a kind of an interesting way. So yeah, worth talking about and keeping an eye on. Let's now go to what I like to do to give an encouraging word. I've told many of you this has to be a part of our talks because it'd be doom and gloom and it'd be pretty tough to handle, wouldn't it, if we didn't have the word to base our lives on. So here's the encouraging word, Psalms 91. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest, beautiful word, in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. Now, isn't that a beautiful passage? And that's truly what God wants us to experience. I have no doubt in my mind that there not be the fear factor in our lives for those of us who have come to dwell in his presence and to rest in his shadow, as it were. Poetic sounding and beautiful thought. But I'm not going to do the rest of the chapter. I'm going to go over that maybe next week. You can look at it in the meantime, Psalms 91. But at the end there, the reason we can take hope is the reason we can is given in this very chapter. And I'd encourage any of you to reflect and meditate on that in the next few days and see what strength comes from that. Good seeing you here. I'm going to do something else once more as I wind down. I'm going to let you see what I've been looking at for the last little bit. And now that the sun is down, you can kind of see what a beautiful evening it is and sunset. How did I get the horizon the way it's supposed to be? There it is. But I wish you could be here to enjoy this with us. It's a beautiful setting here in Cabo San Lucas. And I'm here with family. Try to bring someone down in ministry every chance we get. And it's a wonderful thing to be with my brother Steve and his wife Grace, my sister Esther and her husband Ron. My wife was here. I appreciate anyone who would pray. Her sister is in St. Louis and is very serious. The hospice there says that she may not make it through the weekend, but appreciate your prayers as Holly just today has left here by herself to fly to St. Louis to be with her sister. And many of you know all about that and what happens. But anyways, we wind down tonight. Thank you all for taking part, sharing in this. Let's stay close as we can. Thanks for all the input and feedback that many of you do share. It's great to be with you again, and we will look forward to the next opportunity. God bless you.